Let's very quickly answer the question, did Charlotte Mason hate new books? Hello and welcome back to the Commonplace. My name is Autumn and we are going to do one of those original green chair sit down very quick videos to answer a question that I think is actually the question to give a lot of moms a sense of relief this time of year. And that question is, did Charlotte Mason hate new books? Now, why does that bring relief? Why do we need to talk about it right now? It is nearly the beginning of February, and that is when curricula groups that have closed membership, meaning you must pay to join before you can see the curriculum that they offer, they are about to open for registration for the 2024-2025 academic year. It is a confusing time for mothers. One, it is so exciting. It is providential that as we are about to enter the February doldrums of homeschooling, you can get super amped and excited about next year. Think about next year's books, next year's lessons, next year's captain ideas, because this year it's doldrum time, but next year is all kicks and giggles still. Now, the other side of that is that it can be a time fraught with anxiety. Who has not asked themselves, is this the most Charlotte Mason curricula that has ever existed, right? We want to be true to the philosophy, we want to be true to the principles, but we can get really worked up on if this one is the best one. Now I'll tell you now, there is no perfect curriculum. I hope that did not shock you. There's not even a perfect curriculum for your family, maybe every single year. I think when you look across the board at the Charlotte Mason curricula that is available to us, which is a tremendous amount of options. My mother-in-law was homeschooling in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, when you kind of just got what you got from your friends or what you found at a homeschool convention that you went to maybe once every couple of years. It was not hop on Google, hop on Instagram like we have today. So we have a number of resources, which is an amazing gift, but again, the anxiety that comes with it. But when you look at each one, I think each one gets a gold star for a different reason. Some stick very closely to Charlotte Mason's PUS or PNEU school programs, using the exact same books, even if they're out of print, hard to find, or include wrong information. Some create everything for you. They send you open and go lesson plans, which might be what you need because you're a beginner, because it's just what you want, or because you're in a particular season. Some use updated books because they want to give you Mason Living books but with correct information, or include fuller understandings of what we know now about God's world. And so depending on the priority for your homeschool, each one of those might be a good option. But that's not even the good news. That's not the sense of relief that's going to come today. So I am noticing this thing. I notice it in myself. I notice it in my friends. I notice it in Common House with the women I'm able to engage with more regularly, that we can feel a lot of mom guilt or shame about not nailing our Charlotte Mason program guides and our timetables. And I've noticed that this is very different than the way Charlotte Mason moms have talked about this historically. And how could I possibly know that? Well, I love going through parents' review articles, marking them up, taking notes, and then recording mini episodes for Common House where I walk through different articles. It's been this new fun little thing I'm doing. And I find that in those articles, moms are saying a lot of the same things that we say, but it's just commonplace. It's like, of course this would happen. I'm a mother teaching at home without a governess. I'm not a school teacher. My home is not a cottage school. And so this just happens. I'll give you an example. I'm gonna link the article above. It's called A Mother Without a Governess. It's one of the ones I recently covered in Common House, but you can read it for yourself and you'll understand it just fine. But in it, she says that her boys are of average intelligence and above average naughtiness. And so sometimes lessons just don't get done. She also says that the program is beautiful from Mason's school, but they can't always finish all of the work, and they can't stick to the timetable if they want to finish the work anyways. She also actually blames the weather for it making it difficult for her sons to complete their work. I mean, literally, she sounds like a mom that I know, except she's not hiding this. This is published in the Parents' Review, the magazine which Mason edited and sent out as encouragement and instruction to all of the families in her school programs or her homeschool programs. And it's really nice to read those things. There's a sense of camaraderie that women who have been homeschooling are not in cottage schools and they're not trained teachers, and they run into these things because a mother teaching her children is very different than a school teacher teaching strangers' children. It's just not the same ball game. And I like reading parents' review articles because they help us remember that and realize that this is commonplace. In fact, my friend Brooke of the Wonder Years podcast, I'll link them above, great for classical ed for the early years. You guys should give them a listen. We were talking about this and she said, you know, the parents' review articles are the original Common Moms. We need more PR articles and less Instagram reels. And isn't that the truth? So in this article, the reason why I brought this up and why it's going to loop into the question we're answering today is because she lists the things that she really loves about the PUS programs that she got from Mason schools. One of them is up-to-date educational books. And I audibly snorted when I read that line, because if someone put that on their curricula website, if they said, we have the most up-to-date educational books, come by our Charlotte Mason program, there would be fires and pitchforks in certain parts of the internet. And that would be for two reasons, of course. One, the books of your time reflect the thoughts of your time. And there are plenty of thoughts swirling around in our time right now that we do not want in our books. That's fine and fair. But the other reason why I think there would be pitchforks and fire on the internet is because people think that Charlotte Mason is equated with only old books. And that, I think, we need to bring some context to. So as you go into this season and you're looking at different options for your family, you actually have your principle and your philosophy and understand how it could work through many different curriculum options. I'm not saying they're all just equal, I'm not that kind of relativist, but I am saying that if you have your philosophy, then you have your anchor and your North Star. And you can work with a lot of things, and you can see what is good in each one, and you can see what maybe you want to leave to the side. So let's get to it. We have a dark, cloudy day. It's barely any light in my life right now, and I'm coming off the flu, so it seems like a really good time to film a video. Okay, first things first. Did Mason actually talk about the time period she was pulling her books from? Not necessarily. She did talk about literature. I believe it's in school education. I will double check that and leave it in the description box because I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants right now. But she does talk about a rule she has for literature for lessons. And that is, and I would actually say it extends generally into the reading life, but we're going to make a distinction here in a second. The rule was 20 years. She wanted a book to have been around for at least 20 years, which is not that long, but she wanted 20 years because there could be a bit of public discourse. The book had to go through the gauntlet, if you will. People could fight with it, they could agree with it, they could like it, and later change their mind. You had a little bit of distance to see if it was actually a good book. So when it came to tales and literature, anything like that, she was picking old books for her lessons. Now the distinction here is lessons in life, and I think it is important that you understand that the stuff you bring to the table and you tell your kids, this is worth your time and your attention and even possibly your imitation. This is what I want you to feast on, to dwell upon, to behold, and in which you will become like this thing. That's a different standard than maybe what you put on the shelf for a perfectly fine book for your kids to read. There's a different weight and significance to the lesson books than there are to maybe just the free reads in your house, which of course you still want to be of high quality, but I think you guys know what I'm talking about. And so for Mason, she's stuck with a lot of old books, but she makes a note that by giving your children through their lessons really excellent literature, often very old literature, you teach them the right taste, the right appetitive taste. They understand what good writing looks like, and then they're able to go and find it in the modern offerings. But then you have the other subjects that I think actually trip a mom up, and this is where a lot of the infighting in the Charlotte Mason world can happen. And the subjects where information or knowledge about that subject is changing. What was accurate in 1905 is actually not accurate today in 2024. And this would be things like natural history, right? In fact, there's one curriculum group, I read a note on their website, and this is pretty standard Charlotte Mason, so I'm not poking at this group. They said that, yeah, you're gonna read these old books. We choose them because they're high quality in terms of living books, the prose, the language, the imagery, but they have incomplete or wrong information in them. But it'll shake out. Eventually your kid will learn that rabbits are not rodents. That was the exact example. And I laughed because that's from Burgess. Thornton Burgess, great books. Everyone loves the Burgess books. I had learned through reading them with my child that rabbits were rodents. And I had been telling everyone this fun fact I learned in our school reading, only to then discover on this website that that was the exact example of a wrong piece of information that has been changed. Another example might be Pluto. Pluto's not a planet anymore. And so things like that do change. And therefore you enter the conversation of, can I use an updated book that is still a living book? So what did Mason think? Mason doesn't necessarily speak about this. At least I've not found it through my readings of her volumes. I have not touched every volume multiple times yet, and so maybe it's in there, and if you know it, please tell me, but I've not really seen anything that's a direct speak to this. However, you can look at her program guides. And in her program guides, the books that she was choosing for these subjects were never really older than 15 or 20 years old. Most of them being within like 5 to 10 years of that school year in its publication, which shows that she was looking for current books on certain topics. And she changed her program guides often because she wanted to bring in the newest information. Everyone knows that Mason loved new science. Things like neuroscience. She was very interested in what people were discovering about God's world and how it would then impact or change the knowledge. She broke her subjects into knowledge of God, knowledge of man, knowledge of the universe. And it always makes me think of a catechism we have in our lessons, which is the first thing I ask my kids every morning is, why do we learn about these things? And they'll say, to know God's world. And I'll say, why do we know about God's world? And they will say, to know his love. when you are trying to introduce a child to God's world, you may want to make sure that your book is actually showing them the true things about God's world. Now, I want to make a note here. The curriculum groups that use the old books will say you must update this knowledge. This book is not accurate, but the language is so beautiful, or it's such a living book, we feel it's the best book still for this topic. Here are ways you can update the information. You may not want to do that work, and so you may skip over that. And I'm trying to tell you that's totally fine. Mason, I think, would have been using new books, but I guess she probably would have been writing her own, because I don't think she'd find a ton of the living books now. And that's the pinch point, right? And so as you look at these things, I just want you to know that actually Mason did not hate new books. If you find a curriculum group that you are interested in and they are trying their best to find new books with correct information that still meet the living standard, that's awesome. Enjoy using those. If you want to use the old books and have to update it yourself so that you are introducing your children to God's world with right knowledge, that's great. The real principal standard there with the books is to make sure that they are living books, by which Mason means they bring life to the mind. They feed the mind what it needs in language, in imagery, in story, so that it continues to grow. Because your job as a mother teacher, is to offer your children the right nutrients or the right nourishment so that they will grow, right? You don't make your kids' legs actually grow. You do feed them, and the quality of the diet does directly impact how well they grow. But they are complete in their own, and that their body knows what to do to grow. And that is the same thing as what Mason means. Children are born persons, they are complete, and they are indivisible body and soul. And so you must feed them appropriate to that nature, to that form. And so when you look at books, you actually can pick a new book for subjects that might need to be updated, which means that might open the door to different curriculum options for you this year. Or you might have to do the legwork to actually update the book yourself. But you must have a right understanding of knowledge of God, knowledge of man, knowledge of the universe, right? The book must correctly introduce these ideas to children. They must be truthfully done, but they also must be beautifully done. And that's the magic pairing of a book for Charlotte Mason. Not just that it's really old, because the books Mason was using, again, in her own programs, other than literature, were not old. They're old to us now, but they weren't old to her then. And hopefully that helps quiet some of the fears about not choosing the most perfect Mason curriculum, because once again, it comes down to your philosophy and your principles. And that is why this is a method and not a system. I'll see you guys next time.